everyone. Thanks so much for coming out tonight and being here for the pre-concert talk. My name is Callie, and I'm the operations coordinator for Ensemble for these times. And we're very lucky to be joined with these artists and composers tonight. And we're also very lucky to hear 3 world premieres. So I was wondering if for the composers, I forgot to introduce everyone. But we have Pamela, Vivian, Stephanie, and Haruka. And so for the composers, I was just wondering if you could talk a bit about your piece and what you hope the audience takes away from the music tonight.
So my piece is called From, and it's going to make for really confusing editing problems, I think, when people in the future write about it. Because they'll be like, where's the rest of the title? But it's a work for 2 string players, percussionist, live voice and electronics, and tape, as we still like to call it, a fixed media, stereo fixed media track. And it's about being from and going to places. So I sort of hope that, I like to not have a goal in mind as what people will take away. I just hope that it allows people to think and go away with whatever comes from it for them.
Yeah, I love that answer. Do you usually do that with all of your pieces, or is that specific to From?
In terms of do that, do you mean like using the fixed media part, or?
The kind of leaving it open to an interpretation.
Yeah, because I tend not to compose works that have some kind of message or trying to teach people anything. I'm much more interested in exploring and hoping that my work leads to exploration on the listener's part as well.
Yeah, thanks. Would you like to share some about your piece?
Sure. The piece I have written for this world premiere is called Wrestling. And Nanette, who's the executive director here, asked me to, if I would be interested in writing a piece for this concert. And I said yes, only if Haruka would be on board. And then Haruka said, yes, I would love to, only if you can write for bass flute and me. So, and only if we can get Stacy involved. And so that is the reason why this piece evolved to be for percussionist and bass flute. The title is Wrestling, and it really explores the different timbres of the bass flute. I've never written for bass flute before, and it's a really fun instrument. It's very different from your standard flute. It has all these overtones that are so luscious, but it's also slower to speak, so you have to take time with it. And so I'm hoping that the pairing of the bass flute and percussion, and Haruka will be playing various different instruments, little instruments, and at the last minute we added an Amazon box to the instrumentation list. It needed a little bit of a kick, so we added a cardboard box. So we have instruments like that are in play, that are homemade instruments. But you also have a metal sheet and different tuned metal slats and wood blocks and bowls. So it's like a homemade version of percussion instruments that really complement the flute, the bass flute. And then the title evokes. So every morning, I compose almost every day, and every morning before I start my day, I live in the East Bay, and I take my dog for a walk, and very often we hit the trails, and it is sort of like evoking the time in the morning, when everybody's just waking up, and the idea of this meditative state, and this idea of this, surrounded by nature and all these thoughts that are kind of ruminating, and so it starts off like that, with these little rustling sounds, and it kind of evolves from that. And so it's just sort of a time to reflect, and but also has a lot of direction it leads into this very rhythmic section. But yeah, it's really highlighting these kind of rustling timbres. So.
Thank you. But were there any unexpected difficulties writing for the flute?
I think I kind of knew this going in, but the idea of writing for bass flute, which is beautiful evocative instrument, but it doesn't have, let's say, the dynamic sort of range that piccolo has, for example, right? Because the piccolo, because of its high pitch, is so piercing, and so I was kind of a little bit concerned about the balance between bass flute and percussion. And percussion can be as soft and as loud as you want. So we decided to just amplify it a little bit. I don't think you'll notice, but it's just to help the bass flute with not having to push so hard.
Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe if we could go to Haruka, and if you could talk a little bit about why you wanted to work with the bass flute for this piece.
Sure. When Annette asked about, what do you want to do, and we started discussing, right? And it was such an open canvas, but I've been always fascinated with the sound world that the bass flute creates, which is really different from anything. It's very it just kind of captures your attention in a really maximized way. And Stacy is such a great player, and I love playing with her. So, what about this combination? And you had the idea of found object percussion, right? So I thought that this sound world of bass flute and percussion noise making, that just sounded really fun to me. And also the instrument choices that we came up with. Last several years, I've been kind of interested in non-conventional percussion instruments, that anything that makes noise that I can find somewhere, like Home Depot to my kitchen to nature, and these things that I just keep collecting these things, and then my garage is full of these toys and junks and car parts and so on. During the COVID time, it was okay, I'm gonna start making music with these things I've been collecting. So I came up with a percussion table, Haruka's percussion table that has rice bowls, and I play with chopsticks, and then the cymbal with the espresso machine strainer cup, to all these things that it just sounds right to my ear. And I started using that and introducing that to different composers, and then they started writing that. So I've been playing a lot of this percussion setup, which I'm very happy. So that's
Yeah, I was here yesterday for the dress rehearsal, and I was very impressed to see all the different instruments you're working with.
I think the pairing of me and Haruka was really quite, it's quite well matched, because it's all. I have a number of pieces now with found percussion and homemade percussion, and it's just really in my sound alley, and so it's a good pairing, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe Haruka, I was also wondering about your experience beyond performing. You're currently the associate artistic director of the Silk Road Ensemble, so I was wondering if you could talk about what goes into your role there.
Yeah, thank you. I've been involved with Silk Road Ensemble, founded now 25 years ago. I've been involved about 15 years, and I found myself in the middle of a leadership artist. My role is basically a conduit between artistic director Rhiannon Giddens and the rest of the ensemble, which is about 35 people from all over the world representing their culture and tradition and musical tradition. Also, some are heavily coming from improvisation training to Western classical music training to folk music to jazz to it's all different, but trying to find the commonality and to create some music together. That's what we do. And basically conduit between artists and representing artist's voice and trying to make Rhiannon Giddens, who is an amazing, really forward-thinking lady who has all these great ideas, and to make out of these ideas, to make a program together is sort of my job, and also connect with 20-something board members and office staffs and so on. So I'm usually like a therapist of everyone.
Yeah, I can imagine. Has it influenced how you see yourself as a performer, how you approach that?
I have to say, this experience has been really life-changing for me, in the sense that I'm a Western classical music percussionist, and my passion goes to working with composers and playing in the contemporary music world. That's my passion. But at the same time, the music I make with Silk Road, it has much more social impact meaning to it. That music, it used to be music is something that either I express my feeling or I try to express what the composer is trying to brainstorm or want to send a message. But then it became something more than just performing the work, but to connect to the people who's on the other side of the stage, and how can music function to do something good in this world. So that has changed the way how I program things, how I produce my own events, and locally as well.
Yeah, thank you. Stephanie, you also can wear multiple hats as a visual artist, a composer, and a musician. So I was wondering if you could talk about your creative process for the visuals that we'll see tonight.
Yeah, sure. Tonight you'll see 4 pretty different types of visuals. I've gone in different directions, and usually with my process, I start with first, whoever is, if there was a prior performance of the piece, just so I can get, as well as maybe the score. As a composer, I kind of already know maybe the sound world, if I could get in touch with the composer too, or like tonight, Judy Bonsall and I had a conversation even, which really helped me kind of get in the mind of, what she was hoping for with the piece. And so I guess with these 4 pieces specifically, I can go, one of them, most of the time, either I'm going out and finding an image or video and then putting it into a program and manipulating or doing something with it, leaving it as is, or even just being in the program and starting from there and creating a design. So I really go in a lot of different directions. It just really depends on, from the research I do at the beginning, where that takes me. And I really like to go in sometimes to the score and the program notes and just underline words and circle and kind of mark it up, start doodling around and get whatever is happening out of my brain onto physical paper and then move from there. So that's a very long-winded answer but not as specific for the pieces, but kind of walks you through some of the process.
Yeah, it's great you have that ability to go through the score and know what all these symbols mean to help you out there. So you probably have kind of a sense of what you're going to do. Is there ever a big mismatch between kind of the vision you have and the composer has?
I'm sure there is. But what I just hope to do is, respect the composer's vision, the piece itself, what the audience is going to be receiving as well, and that's just all. Try my best to see. It may not be specifically in line with what maybe they were envisioning, but whatever I can do to just kind of help be a support to the music and the performance. Not the star, but just there to hopefully get whatever they would like to say across.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Pamela, if we could go back to you and talk a little bit about this interdisciplinary genre and how you kind of came about it and developed it. Can you remember?
So you were talking about just working with voice and electronics, and because also, I mean, when you say interdisciplinary, that is really pertinent to the way that I work, because a lot of the work I make involves my live voice and electronics, sometimes also with chamber ensemble, often with video. The piece I have tonight does not have video, but I often have video, sometimes multiple channels of video, and sometimes the video is actually manipulated in real time from gestures I'm doing, or from the amplitude of my voice, or different things. But the way that I guess this came about is just I started experimenting. I think, in the early days, I mainly was just doing music, composing music and performing it, mostly composing it and for myself and performing it. But I always get very excited when I see work that moves me, and that always spans from not just sonic work, but also visual art and movement. And so I get excited and I just have to dive in. And so then I add these elements. And a lot of the things that come into my work are just happy accidents, where I was trying to do something and I didn't know what I was doing. So the mistakes I made ended up being more interesting than what I was actually trying to do. And then they become part of the work. And that's been the case with a lot of work that I've done with video, because I was just figuring out how to do it, and something very strange would come about, and then that would end up being in the piece. For the piece that's happening tonight, some of the experimentation had to do with the percussion, because Nanette actually asked me to make a piece for 2 string players, my voice and electronics, and found object percussion. And I guess I just assumed she was asking me that because she'd seen other things I've done where I've used found objects. But I later learned that there was another piece on the program that also had found objects, and so she was just thinking, since we're already in found object land, we might as well go with that. And so I came up with all these objects that I have Haruka. Poor thing. I mean, I have her often when you're composing for instruments, you forget that they need time. Like if you're saying, well, you're going to be in measure 31, you're going to be using this avocado container, and then in measure 32, you have to immediately be using this ball whisk, and so suddenly she's got to draw, and then you have to, at the same time, I'd like you to be playing these notes on the vibraphone, and so it was a little bit of a trick of figuring out what is actually physically possible, but she's done amazingly with swapping back and forth between all of these instruments. I mean, you were talking about flute being difficult or different from what you had written for before. I wrote a piece for Claire Chase once, and I just decided she needed to use all the flutes. And so, but what I didn't understand was that, she called me up and she said, it takes time for me to pick up the contrabass flute. I can't just play a note on the contrabass flute after I've just been playing the alto flute. I was like, so you have to kind of figure that out.
All you need is an inventive machine that has all these different arms, and then bring it together. Then I'll play that.
You're that machine.
But that's the part of this, piece that makes it really fun, for me at least. Some people, percussionists have really different characters, and some people are amazing orchestra players, but when they see this, You're like, no, I'm not playing that. But like this kind of thing gives me excitement, and like just it becomes almost like it's better than video game. So like figuring it out how to hit the right bang and the right timing and then coordinating everything. It's almost like a dance movement.
Can I ask what is the strangest instrument you've ever played and your most favorite?
That's really hard, but I must say I was really trained well when I worked with composer Tan Dun, Chinese composer who wrote water percussion concerto, paper percussion concerto. I have performed water percussion concerto with the San Francisco Symphony as a soloist. And all I touch is like a big bucket full of water and dripping of water and splashing and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, that's part of being percussionist in today, that there's so many different things that can make sound, and that I can call a percussion for anything that makes sound. So
Yeah, super cool. Are there any questions from the audience?
Yeah, Tan Dun's Water Concerto, the one that she was talking about, where you splashed off, it's one of the most popular pieces on social media of contemporary classical music, and I was wondering, by popular, just like most amount of people like have seen it and like have disliked it. I'm saying as a lover of contemporary classical music. That's a natural reaction, but I was asking if she thought it was a positive thing that it was still being shared around and people were still getting exposed to it, despite the negative reactions.
I'm sure everyone has different opinion about it, but for me, like any entry doors that gives to people who are not exposed to things that the composers come up to, or even like just the people who don't really know how to listen to classical music, but it's like, oh, tapping on the water that becomes the music, and then you get paid to do that in front of an orchestra. That's cool. But like that could be an inspiration to getting into a contemporary music. If you want to call that as a contemporary music or just tapping water, and that became, like, in a sense, Tan Dun is genius in bringing these things that he comes up with, and then he marketing, and like he brands it, and then he makes it on his own vocabulary. And like people have been doing that everywhere, like you can do that in the bathtub too, and then you can become a musician. To give accessibility, I think it was really successful, and maybe it was encouraging for the first listeners to get into the classical music world. So I encourage that.
Maybe one more question? Yes?
This may be a rather naive question, but I don't suppose you have a score. So do you have an outline? And if you don't, how do you communicate your cues?
Actually, I think all of the pieces on this evening's program have scores. So it's everything's notated. There is a lot of music also. There's a lot of contemporary music that is not completely notated, or that has graphic scores, or unusual sort of instructional scores. But in the case of this evening, I think everything is pretty conventionally notated. Yeah, we have scores.
Okay.
We have scores. I think it's when you're doing I think there are 3 world premieres tonight. So I think part of the process, though, for a composer is to actually get to work with performers. As far as you have the written score, but then there are a lot of things that come into play as far as what works, and because it's all in your head at first, right? So you need the executor. You need people to help you with executing, and sometimes there are things that you need to tweak with the process of
Well, you need to be together in a certain sense.
Well, you're together with the score makes people together. So the score, because you're reading from the same score.
Are there markings on the score as to variation of interpretation?
Yeah, I think, there are enough markings for there to be a general guideline, but then also a little bit of freedom for the performer to be expressive.
Well, we're really excited to hear the music tonight and hear the performance, so thank you so much for joining us, and we'll hear you soon.